Tim. What are you here for? You're not on the agenda.
Tim just asked me to come just in case y'all had any questions about the ethics.
Okay.
About the what?
Ethics.
Tim Parrott's gonna be here later if you have any other questions, just if you have any.
Okay.
Deal me. What I gave you is I gave you 2 copies.
Are we on?
And what I said on the original one, some of the introduction stuff was okay. Thank you. But we had to go all this process.
I'm gonna call the operations committee together. Get a little bit late start, but we had a very important meeting before. Very excellent presentation done by TDEC and Chairman Dittenberg. Hats off to her, she did very well. We're gonna start with a prayer with Reverend Shelton and the pledge of allegiance by Chairman Wandale.
Let's pray together. Father, we give thanks for all that you do for us. God, we pray that as we meet tonight, that we might explore the many opportunities of being able to serve our fellow man. We give you thanks for giving us the opportunity to do that. God, we pray that you might be with each person in this room. God, may we just honor you with our presence, for it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge, salute. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we got the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add one item to the agenda, please. Resolution number 19-06-759, authorizing the circuit court clerk to charge and collect a $5 fee for the processing of electronic traffic citations.
Okay, have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. One other thing on the agenda is we're going to have 2 people speak under the ethics policy guidelines. And Mr. Shelton is the one that actually wrote the guidelines, and he's going to speak real quick, if that's okay with the board, because he has to be somewhere at 6:30. And Tim Parrott will be back after his school board meeting to carry on with that discussion.
I just wanted to ask if we could add Mr. Pless somewhere maybe under new business to talk about the motorcycle safety issues at some point.
Okay.
That's okay.
And then after this, we'll do, because I just want to get Tim out of here, we'll do opportunity for people to speak.
Gentlemen, just to be here to answer questions, Tim had reached out to me today, and Commissioner Isbell just asked if I'd come, and along with Mr. Parrott. Mr. Parrott will be here in just a little bit, just to sort of address anything in regards to the ethics policy. You had sent that policy to the ethics committee to go over, to review, to suggest changes, to update, or to do anything that may need to be done, and then forward back to this committee, which ultimately would go to county commission. In the midst of that, we determined that there was a couple of things that we were looking at in regards to that, the biggest of which was the purpose for the ethics policy. The ethics policy mainly being there for disclosure purposes and for violations of any type of financial gifts and things of that nature. I think what happened back when we originally wrote the ethics policy back in 2005 and 6, we were under the impression that the ethics committee and that policy would also govern behavior, inappropriate behavior by county officials and those sorts of things. We found out very quickly from the state of Tennessee that that was not part of our charge, nor was it what the law was allowing. The law was much more precise in what we were to deal with, and it comes to find out the committee that we had created really had no authority, and in fact, in 2015, the CTAS department sent out a memo expressing that really and truly any committee that's been established under that statute through those policies are pretty much mute. Their only authority is to take a complaint and forward the complaint to another party, that there's no acting that can be done by that body. There's not a censor that we can do. There's not a charge that we can do or anything like that. So from that perspective, we felt like it was redundant to have an ombudsman and a committee that was doing the exact same function that the ombudsman would do. That's what we would suggest that we go back. So what we did was we sat and we rewrote that. We took out that and the ombudsman and cited all the statutes and then forwarded it back to this committee. Since that time, I've been able to talk with Steve Mead and some others about your all's concerns. The position that we had involved less about the ombudsman. That may be a task that you want to consider. That may be amendments you want to make. Our main concern at that moment was we've got a redundancy with a committee that when they meet, it's public, and if someone were to bring something and file it, even though it may be invalid, their filing it makes it a public record that somebody then could use to punish somebody inappropriately. And we felt like that was an abuse of what was intended by state government. So that was our request, was to send back to you guys what we had written. And certainly it's your all's policies to amend as you see fit. But I'll be glad to take questions.
Commissioner Meade?
Yeah, as Mr. Shelton said, he and I spoke about this, and I've been talking with the law director. Basically, the elimination of the committee was unanimous. Everybody agrees that the committee didn't have an authority. It actually created some problems. But when the new draft was put out, it removed all of the steps. If you ask questions like, well, if you have a complaint, who do you go to? It didn't say. And if you go to a person with a complaint and they just say, well, no, that's not really a problem, is there any other route? Is there any other review of those decisions? There was a number of things that just didn't happen. And so the comments that I made that led to this being referred back was the fact that we need to make sure we have the process for the handling and review of complaints that has all the proper second looks. I mean, for instance, if the ombudsman has a complaint against the ombudsman, clearly the person would not have to be required to take it to the ombudsman. And so there needs to be a process that's done. I also think that if the ombudsman has the authority to make decisions on things that are just don't apply to our authority under state law, then there's this person that takes it, there's at least a person that's approved by commission that they can look at that and say, you know, I agree. And if there's any concerns, it can be brought in, so say like the law director could bring it to an executive session or something where it doesn't have to become private, doesn't have to become public. Because we have to make sure we're maintaining essential privacy. Because unfortunately in this day and age, sometimes there's people that make allegations that later on we find out are absolutely phony. And so we want to make sure we protect people's privacy until that time. And so what I've recommended, and I've had discussions with the law director and you, Mr. Shelton, is that process be put back in. A lot of that process was in the previous procedure. Then it had things like, at this point, it goes to the committee. Well, clearly it wouldn't go to the committee, it has to go to somebody else. I'm thinking it would go to maybe the chair of the commission or somebody appointed by the chair, for instance. I mean, there's a couple of different options there. Or a person that would be the secondary ombudsman that was appointed and approved by commission, for instance, to make sure it's somebody that's properly qualified and the commission has authority over. And then the commission always has the authority to call a meeting for a specific concern to delve into these things if they think it's necessary. But as soon as you start getting into commission meetings, you have to make sure that the privacy issues have been addressed. So my recommendation is that based upon some drafts that I've given the law director and then I've discussed with you, that all we really do is reintroduce the procedural steps. So when somebody says, well, who do you go to? They go, well, I guess maybe it's the ombudsman. Instead, they can say, oh, you go to the ombudsman, and then this is what the ombudsman is going to do, and then that person's going to explain to you how this kind of thing would be handled in the process. And then it requires, as the current process does, it requires a written complaint. If someone's going to make an ethics complaint, if they're not willing to put it in writing, I think we have to wonder whether or not it's valid. And so my recommendation is we bring this back next month, the law director and Mr. Shelton and I can review this, and it'll go out for review to commissioners beforehand. I think we can have a document that's pretty complete, and it addresses the handling review of complaints in such a way that it's not ambiguous and that it maintains the essential privacy for people, to keep us all from having silly things like lawsuits against the county.
If I
Hold on a
may.
second, Commissioner Mead, actually, the chairman of that committee will be here later to speak, and he'll be the one that will take the action. The reason why I asked Mr. Shelton is because he actually wrote the guidelines, but point taken.
Well,
So
the
if you-
guidelines were brought to the commission for
I know,
approval.
but what I'm saying, we can have this discussion again when
Okay.
Dr. Parrott comes in.
Let me just say this, and certainly I can answer any questions you've got, but I'll get out of the way and let you all go on with your meeting. But part of the ambiguity was by design. I don't want you to think that it came to you without great thought. The ombudsman process, filing something with the ombudsman, has been what we used. And we used it for, I guess, close to, 14 years, thereabouts, since 2005. And as a result, when it got to having it filed and having it processed and everything, ultimately, the Ethics Committee never met. So what we were basing it on was those filings that were made to the ombudsman seemed to take care of the whole issue. It never really needed to ever go to us. But the reason we weren't more specific about certain things is if, for example, Jay were to receive one against me as a county official, that process may take a different direction than maybe an issue that's brought up against one of my staff. How we deal with the staff might be treated differently than how they would deal with me. For example, if my staff makes a mistake on something and maybe there's a violation of disclosure that they should have done, Jay would bring that to me as the office department head, and then we would deal with that internally. Whereas if I did that, it could rise to the level of having to maybe even go to the election commission, or it could even go all the way to the DA if there was a criminal element involved. And so the committee was never really needed, and that's really where our focus stayed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
by
think we all
design,
agree
it
on
was
that.
left for you all to make some decisions, but we definitely felt like that as far as a committee, we get in the way more than we help the equation. And so that's really what we came up with as far as our determination, and that's why you've got what you've got in front of us. From there, Mr. Parrott will be here a little bit later, and you can certainly inform him what you want to go for.
I apologize for speaking much today, but I thought this was going to be the end of the
Oh, no,
discussion for the
that's what I was
meeting.
trying
And-
to say. That's why we
Yeah,
took
okay.
him out of order.
And to be quite honest, it may be another month before that even is something that you all vote on, because I think those amendments will have to be voted on by this group to be put back in and go that route, and that's fine. And but we wanted to come tonight, I think myself and Mr. Parrott, to let you know that you know, this is your all's policy. You all were charged by the state of Tennessee to set that policy in motion. We're not trying to tell you what you should and shouldn't do or can and can't do, as much as we're just trying to give good, sound advice on what we see from our side and give you some input from that direction back. That's all we're here to do. But if there's any other questions, I'll be glad to answer them. If not, I'll be glad to get out of your way.
Commissioner Wendell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not to belabor the point, we'll talk about it more later, but I think there is guidance in Section 1. I'll just read the last sentence. In most cases, proper authority would be either the law director, district attorney's office, election commission, or the comptroller of Tennessee, or a chair of a board. So, and, you know.
And that would remain.
Yeah, so I think there is direction for someone to go file with the proper entity, and it's, to me, it kind of states where you go right there. So they could still go to the law director, whether he's called the ombudsman or the law director, they could still go to the law director, and that's the way I interpret it.
Well,
But
and let me also say this in line with what Mr. Wandell's saying. If someone came to me and they made a claim of a charge that somebody had violated the law, you know, I feel sort of bound by my oath to have to take that somewhere. Now, it may be I would go to the law director, I'd go to somebody and say, look, I've got somebody making an accusation that says someone violated the law, and I would feel compelled to do that. Even if it was somebody I trusted and I knew, I still felt like my responsibility would be to forward that on and let them do whatever was necessary to go forward. But remember that with the policy that the state charged you to do, you've got two functions. One is to govern disclosure. That's in a meeting. That's if you have a conflict of interest, that type of thing. The other is violation of law. Because we're under the 81 Act, pretty much any type of gift is against the law for us to take. And so it's pretty basic and straightforward. Either you violate the law, you violate some form of disclosure, or you're in compliance. It's one of those three. All right, thank you. Appreciate you.
All right, let's do the approval of the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
With the addition of
With the addition of the resolution. And now we've got appearance of citizens, if anyone here wants to speak for anything that's not on the agenda.
Good evening.
Name and address, please.
My name's Robert Pless, and I live in Andersonville, Tennessee. I'm a lifelong resident of this county, born and raised in Norris, Tennessee. I've talked with Josh several times and talked with other people as well in the county, and as you can tell, I ride a motorcycle. I have most of my life, and I'm here tonight to ask to see what this county can do, if anything, to better protect riders in this county. One thing that is an extreme hazard to anybody on a motorcycle is people mowing their yards and blowing grass clippings out on the highway. And it's not only grass clippings, you get gravel, you get dirt, you get debris and litter where people have thrown it out, and it covers a highway. On two wheels on a motorcycle, if you hit that grass, it's like hitting a sheet of ice. And it's not if you're going to go down, it's when and how hard you're going to go down. And it's not just with motorcycles, it's with automobiles as well. I've got a good friend that went around a curve one day and the road was covered with grass, and it caused her to slide off over an embankment and totaled her car. She was very lucky to get out without serious injuries, but I've seen so many of my friends, family, fellow riders that have gone down, been injured, and suffered tens of thousands of dollars worth of medical expenses, plus the loss of a motorcycle. I know myself, my motorcycle, I've got $28,000 invested in it. They're not cheap anymore. But I've got a lot more invested in my passenger, who's my wife of 30 years, behind me. And I just come to see if there's something that we can do to educate the public better, to keep this from happening. If there's some kind of an ordinance that can be passed, if there's some kind of signs that can be made and put up as we come into the communities. In the little town of Andersonville, every weekend, there's not a weekend that goes by that I don't hear this loud rumble from my house. I live right on Highway 61. And not just once, but numerous times. And it's groups of motorcycle riders that are out here riding charity benefits for kids that have cancer, for all kinds of different benefits. People that have fallen upon hard times. They're the most giving and most caring people of any organization anywhere in the country. And I'd just like to see everybody make it home safe. If there's anything that you all can do, it would be greatly appreciated. I'm tired of losing my friends. Any questions?
Commissioner McCamey?
Jay, would that fall under the littering?
State law for littering the highway?
Depends on what the facts here are. I mean, we're all concerned about motorcycle safety and the general welfare of traveling public, but is it litter that's causing this? Is it people speeding? Is it traffic law violations? What is the specific issue we need to address?
The issue is the people that come in, and especially on the ditch lines right out next to the highway where they're at, is mowing and blowing the grass clippings out on the highway along with gravel and dirt that accumulates on the side of the highways, and then litter that's been thrown out in their yard. And then when we come around, if we come around a curve, and I'll give you a prime example, we were traveling up 116 going to Brushy Mountain Prison to take the tour one Sunday, and we came around a curve and it was absolutely covered with grass. Just luckily, nothing was coming the other way and we were able to swing around it, but that's not always the case. And I know my motorcycle weighs 1,000 pounds, and if that thing comes down on you, it's going to hit hard. And it's the stuff that just blown out, and people don't understand. It's all going to end up back in your yard anyhow when it dries and the cars blow it back in there. Grass clippings are good for your yard.
Commissioner McCain, to answer your question, there's a optional provision in the International Property Maintenance Code that we've been reluctant to adopt here in Anderson County on mowing grass. And the section that's contentious is you've got to mow the grass when it gets a certain height. But there's a directional requirement in there. Maybe we can look at adopting a portion of that so that grass can't be blown into the street or public right-of-way or something like that. Let me do a touch of research on that issue, and I'll get back with you next month at operations. And let me look at, I don't think it could ever qualify under the nuisance law, but let me delve into this subject and I'll respond back to you at Operations Committee next month. Is that okay with you?
That's fine with me. I just, that was the only thing that I could think of, is that it would be just like throwing out your garbage on the side of the road.
Right.
You know, it's littering. Well, if you're blowing something out of your property onto the road, it looks to me like it'd be littering.
I'll look at all those options and respond back to you, sir.
Well, I do know that there have been certain counties and communities in other states that have adopted ordinances and imposed fines on residents that do blow their trash and their clippings and stuff out into the road, because it does make it a hazard.
The problem there is that we're a county government formed under the Tennessee Constitution. We're not a charter form of government here. We're not a municipality. We don't normally have the ability to adopt separate ordinances. We can control nuisance issues, and there's some other statutes that allow us to control various things like adult-oriented establishments, but we're a creature of the statute, and the statutes necessarily don't give us broad power to address anything that we may see as a danger, so we're kind of confined. We do have a lot, or a little bit broader latitude when it comes to nuisances, but I'll look at all these issues, and we'll look at the litter law, as Commissioner McCamey suggested. We'll look at the International Property Maintenance Code, and we'll look at the Nuisance Enabling Authority and see if we can't put something together for you, sir. But thank you for your time and your concern.
Hold on a second. Commissioner Meade?
Yeah, is this primarily a problem from private property owners? I mean, is it a problem with the guys that are hired by government agencies, the state and the counties, to mow along the roads? Are they better about not doing what you're talking about?
Now, the state's actually the worst offender, because the grass it's usually that high when they mow it, and when they come through there, it covers the roads up. It's really bad when the state comes through and mows.
Especially on 116.
Yeah, and through Andersonville too. Down through there, like I say, there's so many bike runs that come that way because of the curves and the roads and so forth. East Tennessee draws so many motorcycles from all over the country.
It's nice motorcycle country.
And they spend a lot of money here.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good thing. It's just that there's so many different people out there. People are not looking. Our worst nightmare are 4 words. Or 3 words. I didn't see you.
I didn't see it.
That's our worst nightmare. And that's words I don't want to hear. I've had way too many close calls myself. And I want to make it back home just like everybody else does. We've got family that we want to come home to too. So anything that you can come up with, or anything, any kind of help or educational things, I know that there is an article coming out in the Clinton paper, I think next week. So hopefully that will get some across. A lot of people you talk to don't even realize it.
They don't think about it.
They don't even think about it. And I think education will go a long ways to help. So, again, anything else from me?
Mr. Clay,
Yes, sir.
a personal question.
Yes.
Your father worked at Alpha 5,
At where?
Y12?
No, my uncle did.
Okay.
Paul
And he-
Pless.
Yeah, Bob Pless.
Paul Pless.
Paul, yeah.
Bob
Paul,
was my
that's it.
Bob was my dad, and he worked for TVA.
Yeah, I had a lot of respect for Paul. I worked with him 50 years ago.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you.
Can I mention one real thing real quick? And I don't know whether you all are aware of this or not, but I was a big part of it back starting around 2007. This county has one of the best kennel clubs anywhere in the southeastern part of the state, and most people in this county don't know about it. I can't understand, if you're trying to bring business in here, why it's not used more as a tool to bring them, because I'm telling you, it's unbelievable, the dogs that they have trained, and the teachers down there have put absolutely hundreds of titles on their own dogs and dogs that they've trained. They have their AKC licensed club. They have shows every year at the East Tennessee Agricultural Center. It's amazing. We bought the property along with Girls Inc. on the west end of Oak Ridge, the old armory that shut down. And we converted the motor pool area behind it into a training facility that nobody in East Tennessee has any kind of training facility. They hold shows, but they don't have training. And I think it's a very good tool that you all could really benefit from in trying to bring new businesses and so forth, and let them know, bring your animals. We've got one of the best training facilities anywhere around. Oh, I was a big part of that. Took a big part of my life for about 2 years to try to secure that property. And I went through 2 mayors in Oak Ridge during the process. So it was a long process, but we're proud of it.
Thank you for your dedication to Anderson County.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
Mr. Chairman, can I speak just a moment? Sure. I just want everybody to introduce Brad Pruitt. He's right here. Brad is Anderson County deputy, has been for about 10 years, hasn't he? He's a Lincoln Memorial Law School student in excellent standing, and he's going to be doing a summer internship. And you just heard his first assignment. So, there you go, Brad. Yes, sir. Be ready to report back. But Brad's great. He brings a lot of knowledge to Anderson County, to my office, both on the criminal justice side through the sheriff's office. And so we're going to let him do some stuff this summer, and he's going to be a wonderful asset to me and take some of these projects like this off. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Next, we got resolution number 19-06-758 to allow partial payments of property tax in current tax year. Regina?
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Do I get to speak on it at
Yes.
all?
Now we can have discussion.
Well, as you know, we've written this resolution. It's one of the things, well, I guess I'll start out telling you why it came about. One of the things that I'm wanting to start in the trustee's office is trying to work to where we can do better at collecting, taxes, and not just that, but to benefit our residents and make it a little easier on our folks that's fixed income, and not just them, but folks like myself, that at the end of the year when we have to pay our land taxes, also you have Christmas and everything coming up. So what we are working on is not just partial payments, because we already actually accept partial payments, but we're wanting to do early payments. And right now across the state, we are mandated to start taking payments the first Monday in October. And with this resolution, this is going to allow us to not just take them before that, but we're going to be able to back up and actually take them before the tax roll is even set. And what we will do is we will go off on the previous year's taxes, and I want to back up to start in January and let people make 12 months worth of, divide their tax payments up into 12 months. And So not only will, they won't be coming to our window to do it, but when they sign up on this, this will be a deduction that's automatically taken out of their bank account. And I've also talked to Robbie, and we are also going to be able to do payroll deduction for some county employees. So by doing this, and then I have to also submit some plans to the comptroller's office, spelling out exactly how we're doing it, making sure, they want to make sure how we're securing it and things like that. And we've actually partnered with 10 Bank. And the people will come in, they'll fill out their information, they'll pick one of 2 dates that we will do the deduction out of their bank account. It'll be a bank draft. It'll go into that account and it'll be held like an escrow. They'll make those 12 months worth of payments, and then those will pay out in December. They'll get their bill in October, but it'll pay out in December. So if there is a tax rate adjustment, or if their tax bill goes up and down, they'll know ahead of time that in November and December those payments will be adjusted either up and down to accommodate that. So this is going to help us, I feel like, make it a lot easier on our tax payers. We're hoping to do away with, I've got a shot in the dark. I'm hoping for 100% in collection and to do totally away with delinquent taxes. But, I mean, that's our goal. We'll get to it as close as we can, but I feel like this is a step that'll benefit us as a county. And one more quick thing, the Finance Committee also today approved, another account too that's going to benefit us in this.
Yeah, we approved that today in Finance Committee, unanimous. What this is actually going to do, it's probably going to add, and correct me if I'm wrong, almost $400,000 in interest that we normally wouldn't get. Is that correct?
It depends on how many we
close?
have sign up.
Yeah.
We'll gain 1.60 on this account. So it depends on how many we have that will sign up. We've already got a fair booth. We're going to promote it at the fair. We've already got a list of folks that's wanting to participate. And it's not even just, people that are necessarily fixed income. We've got different ones that travel, that have multiple properties. This is just going to make it easier. Like I said, I'm going to participate in it because it's going to be easier for me even to spread my payments out over a 12-month time than having to come up with all of it in October or December. So.
And everything that's deposited is federally insured, by the way, without having to go into all those details, but everything's going to be insured.
Yes, and we will gain interest on that account.
Or February the 28th.
Pardon me?
Or February the 28th.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll cut down on those February the 28th lines. We might get a lunch next February 28th. So.
Virginia, this is awesome. I can tell you from my experience, it's so much easier for people to come up with a monthly installment instead of the whole thing at the end of the year, and I'm so glad you're doing it. And I think it's great that at one time we had the payroll deduction here, and I was disappointed that we got rid of that, but I'm really happy, and I'm glad you're bringing it back. I know a lot of employees and certainly will take advantage of that, and I know many citizens will take advantage of the monthly payments. Great idea. I think we'll do a lot better on tax collections there.
Any other, Commissioner McCamey?
So I can't just come in and pay monthly cash?
You can. Right now we take partial payments where you can come in and make those payments now.
But only starting October 1st.
Once they get their bill, that's the way it is, but this resolution is going to be, it will change that. Now, with doing the escrow account, when we do a bank deduction, a bank account deduction, it's going to go into that escrow account and sit there. And then in October, we'll be able to put it into our system. But if you came in February and just wanted to make a payment right then, it's not going to be in our system right at that moment unless we do it in this way, to where it's going to be a bank deduction because of the way we've got the system set up. You'll be able to make those payments when the bill comes due. Does that make sense? Unless you do a bank draft.
I couldn't pay monthly,
You can.
but not before October 1st.
Well,
Cash. it has to be,
We'll have to
The
set
bank
up,
draft?
if we have some that want to do that, there'll be some other, we can set it up, yes,
But if
to
I
where you
wanted-
can do that, but
if I wanted to pay quarterly,
not in the bank deduction. You're making it a little difficult on me now, Mr.
but
McCamey.
could I? Well, I mean, I've talked about it on Facebook this week. As a matter of
Yes.
fact, I've mentioned your name several times that people need to contact you, but I was hoping that we could make monthly payments or quarterly payments cash, you know, throughout the year instead of having one time. And I had mentioned that you had this resolution that was going to be presented and that we'd be voting on it. But, and a lot of people are really excited about that.
Yes, they are. And most of them are wanting the bank draft option. If we have some interest in folks, I'm not going to turn any money away. Let me put it that way.
Well, a lot of our
If-
seniors don't like anybody getting into their bank account.
Yes.
And I've noticed that
Sure.
by hanging out at
And if we
senior
have
center,
some,
so.
if we have some that want to do it that way, to come in and just make cash payments, we will make that happen.
Okay, that's what I need to know. Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you,
Thank
Regina.
you.
Ethics Policy Guidelines. Chairman, Dr. Parrott. We had a little discussion with Tim Shelton. He was here earlier to speak about, because he was the one that wrote it. And I think Commissioner Meade and Commissioner Wandell had some statements too that they made. I know that you probably didn't get to hear those.
Yeah, and I've come into this, evidently the Ethics Committee hadn't met in a long time, and the first time it met, they made me chairman, so I don't know what that tells you. So, but yeah, I think the way I understood it and what research I did is that Anderson County is the only county that has an ombudsman for the Ethics Committee. They don't have an Ethics Committee. Most of other towns don't have an ethics committee. It is just done by departments, and I think that is under this this new code. That's what the committee adopted.
And I think in the earlier discussion between Commissioner Meade and Commissioner Wandell and Tim Shelton about some of the guidelines, I think he's going to go back and probably get with you and have some discussions and you know, with some of the other commissioners, maybe come back next month.
Okay.
You know, with some updates or maybe some changes and some direction or none at all.
Okay. Okay. And we can meet again. Yeah.
There is counties and cities that have ethics commissions. The first CTAS proposal had that. Knox County has an ethics commission right now. They hold actual trials over there. But I think what you wanted to eliminate was peer review of some of these issues, and that's fine. But there is other.
I think that was one of the things that, and I
There
like I said,
is other counties and cities that have adopted that program, because the reason why is CTAS first put out the model policy that had that, and then they came back later and said, look, there's no statutory authority for an ethics commission, and they backtracked on it, but that's the history of it.
I agree.
Commissioner Meade?
Yeah, just very, very briefly. All we're really trying to do is make sure there's a process for the handling and review of complaints, and that maintains essential privacy during that process.
Yeah, I think that
And
was
so-
one of the big things that
Yeah.
when the committee met, that there was a lot of discussion on, is that they didn't, because when you put the ethics committee together, it's a public meeting.
Yeah.
And you bring somebody in, even though you don't know if it's true or not true, you know, sometimes if they ask the question, it becomes true. And I think that's what a lot of them sitting there, they were not experts in doing an investigation and things like that, so.
Everybody agrees that having the committee not only doesn't serve a good purpose, it actually
Yep.
causes a problem.
Yep. Any questions?
Anything else for Dr. Parrott?
Thank you. I'm gonna go home and eat supper.
We need a motion to defer it, yeah.
Yep. All right. And then what I'll do is I'll set up a meeting with the ethics committee, and we'll get that set up.
Okay, we got a motion to defer, we got a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Dr. Parrott.
Thank you.
Mayor Frank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item on the agenda is you all were very gracious back in 2018 and approved matching funds for a grant application for Briceville Volunteer Fire Department in their efforts to build a fire station in Briceville. The state loved their application, but because it was such a small area, not a water line, not a sewer project, we just didn't score enough points. So unfortunately, we did not win. They have continued their efforts to build a fire hall. They have purchased and put together several parcels of land. They've been working hard. They have come up with an alternative plan, and that is to file for a USDA grant application. They have been successful with USDA before, and so before you is a resolution asking for the same commitment that was made in January of 2018, but this time as a USDA grant application. So the request is for the county to provide matching funds up to, but not to exceed $30,000 of the total eligible project cost should they be awarded this grant.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Have a motion, second, discussion. Commissioner Wanda.
Just one quick thing. Once this is done, Mayor, and it'll be down the road, of course, I'd like to pursue this same process with Claxton.
Okay.
We've got this monstrosity out beside the building that isn't able to be used whatsoever, and they'd like to tear it down and reconstruct in some capacity, but I'm certainly in support of this in Briceville, so.
And we will be with Claxton as well.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely, and I think Medford this year is doing some, an equipment request or grant through USDA, so they've been very helpful to Anderson County and helped to build the library in Briceville, so.
Any other discussion? Commissioner May?
I just want to say, we always get concerned when there's matching funds. In the case of what we need to do for the firefighting rescue team, the fire departments in this county, is if we don't get the matching, then we're going to have paying for all of it. And so this is a win-win, because one way or the other, we have to support this. It would be nice if the USDA would put in a big bunch of it. Thanks.
Keeping fingers crossed.
Commissioner McCamey?
The property that y'all, do you own it now, or is it part of the?
Yes, we own the property.
Okay. And you're not using any of the school property now? I know at one time we talked about some of the school.
The whole fire department is still on the Methodist Church property. But we bought a piece of property, actually three pieces of property further up on 116.
Okay. I know at one time they talked about possibly building a new fire hall on some of the land there at Briceville School, but that's not, you're not using any of the school property, okay?
No, we've already bought that property.
All right, great deal.
Wait till we get this, the money for the grant, before we can start pouring concrete, fixing it to pour concrete. We
Great.
can't do nothing till
USDA says they cannot touch anything until they're awarded and approved.
Okay, is any part of this the USDA loan, or is it all grant money?
Some will be loan, yes. If they win, so.
Okay.
And we've got three board members here as well, Richard Braden and Ralph Daniels, and I make that Shane's on the board too now, not yet.
he will be for taking.
Yes, Richard Braden, he's chairman. Yep. Okay, all in favor, we've already voted. Anything else? Thank you.
All right, next item is, I have a draft letter, and so I put on the header there, proposed letter of support, and you'll see the two areas I've left blank. Or actually, thank you, Commissioner. Or actually, just one area I left blank was the vote if you all would support this letter. What this is if probably I'll point you to paragraph 2 is the most vital under the current wage index, and this is Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. All 95 counties in Tennessee fall among the lowest reimbursement rates in the United States. You've probably heard Nathan and I talk about this in terms of EMS, same kind of, we're in the same boat. The wage index has created a challenging environment that has negatively impacted the healthcare system in Tennessee. And Tennessee has the second highest hospital closure rate in the United States. So you've probably seen on the news some of the rural hospitals shutting down. And then this turns around and puts pressure on other services. So what I'm asking for is approval of this proposed letter. There is a public comment period that ends June 24th. And I could have written one just myself, but I think it carries a lot more weight if commission and the mayor submit a letter of support for this proposed rule change for Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. This would increase reimbursement rates for hospitals in Tennessee.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion?
I think there's an article in yesterday's paper on the editorial about this same issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? On the same note, Chairman Wandale and Commissioner Mead have also been sending some letters and contacted the state about some new laws that go into effect that would help support some rural doctors. And I want to say I appreciate that very much.
Very good. The last item is requesting authorization to send just a basic letter of support with not a lot of editorial comment, just we support Senate Bill 3619. This is the Ambulance Transportation Sustainability and Accountability Act. And what this does, and Bobby Joe could probably speak more to it, but there has been a lot of fraud in the dialysis industry with some ambulance services around the country. And so what the federal government has done is really punish ambulance services that are doing it right, that are following the rules, that are honest brokers. And so the way Congress has dealt with the fraud is to zero out or reduce dialysis transport reimbursement. And so this would help our system and also other systems across the state who are doing it right. So that's what this legislation is about. It would for boiled cabbage, it will increase our reimbursements.
Need a motion?
Yes.
Motion to approve.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. Braden Duncan Flats. Referred from Operations Committee meeting, May 20, 2019, discussion regarding the oil and gas company. Jay, can you tell us anything? I know, and I think Shane's left, but he had been talking to the oil and gas companies about, maybe a possible lawsuit or something like that, where the gas companies had been using those roads and they were supposed to come back in and repair them. I think there's some speculation between whether, the county was supposed to do it or trying to get the oil and gas companies to come forward and live up to it, and maybe some of them went out of business and some of them think that time has expired.
There's a couple issues going on. I'm glad you kind of honed it in. I thought when I saw this on the agenda, I thought you wanted to talk about that detour route that we'd talked about when 116's blocked or any of those other roads. But I think what you're talking about is the old issue that started back in 04-05 about Atlas Oil Company damaging our roads.
That's correct.
What happened back then was we got some complaints from the neighborhood up there that the heavy-duty vehicles were causing problems with potholes and the cracking shoulders. I wrote a letter to Atlas saying, look, you need to fix our roadways. They wrote back and said they would as soon as they finished with their production run up there. They even made these assurances to Gary Long. Gary was very concerned about it. Over time, they quit running up there. I don't know, I think you're familiar with that industry up there. For some reason, they quit pumping. We tried to contact them back, and they said we had no agreement. Well, we didn't have an agreement. We had, other than the letter that they sent back, and it would be an implied contract. In fact, there was no formal express contract on that. They just agreed to fix the roads. The statute of limitations passed on that. There's a 6-year statute of limitation on those contracts, and that passed on that like in 2013 or something, if I recall. We started trying to contact them back, and they just wouldn't return our call on that. I think Shane had a little bit of luck talking with them, but he got nowhere as far as them promising to finish the roads or take care of the roads. The last I heard, Gary was planning on resurfacing it on the normal resurface schedule and trying to fix that. But if they're back operating, I wish somebody would let us know. Because if they start operating and pumping, we'll get a contract with them and we'll enforce that contract. And I'm talking about an express written contract if they damage our county roads. The other issue that's kind of a secondary issue that popped up, Gary didn't used to have the authority to ask for a bond for damages on our roads. He does now. So when we see whatever enterprise that's tearing up our roads, the highway superintendent can go out and get a actual bond, a performance bond. And I think that's great. So if we see something like this, a long-term use, a logging venture, whatever that's going to put some very heavy vehicles on our roads, we need to get a bond in place, similar to like a subdivision bond that we've done many times before. But that's where it's at. But Tim, if you hear of anybody saying they're up there running, let us know, and we'll move in that direction and try to get a contract in place or a bond in place to cover this work. Have you been up there lately? What's the condition of the roads now?
Well, it deteriorates, monthly,
Okay.
and it's definitely not getting better.
I need to check with Gary and see where we're at on the rotation list of just resurfacing those roads. It seems like they would be coming up at this point. We're talking about an issue that's been going on probably 16, 17 years. I can check with Gary and find out if he's planning on resurfacing those and when it'll come up on the list.
He's been doing a lot of stuff in District 4, and he just got done with Val Mountain. It's wonderful.
Oh yeah. Well,
And,
I think I was up there with Shane on Val Mountain, and he came in and fixed that mess. But the same type procedure, Val Mountain, he came up and patched potholes until it finally gets to the point where it comes up on the rotation list for resurfacing, and that's what happened with Val Mountain. We're hoping that happens up at Braden Flats and Duncan Flats. But I can check with Gary and see exactly where the status is when that comes up for resurfacing.
The way I understand it is we may have a new coal company coming in that they're negotiating, and I understand the name of the company is Copper Glow Coal Corporation, Copper Glow.
Copper Glow.
And of course, they'll be using slate stone predominantly.
Well, that's a county road.
That is a county
remember
road.
we negotiated a purchase of that for, what was it, $10?
And if they do, we may have to rethink about where we just approved that for the ATVs. Because if you got coal trucks coming down through there in abundance, I don't know that we'd want to have the ATVs going up and down through there.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. But that's a perfect opportunity also to put a bond in place where we know that there's going to be a big event, there's a potential for damage on our roadways. Go ahead and put that performance bond in place. What'd you say, Copper?
Copper Glow.
Okay. Let me get back with you next month. I'll find out where we're at on the rotation list.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Commissioner McCain.
Jay?
Yes, sir.
I think back when Commissioner Wandale was the chairman of what we call the Revenue Committee,
Yes, sir.
we talked about gasoline and oil severance tax, asking the state to approve it for Anderson County. Whatever become of that?
Well, you remember the big lawsuit we got into with Coal Creek that we just won here last year? There's a statute that starts out, the very first words on it, no other tax will be imposed. It's a severance tax. And when we started imposing the ad valorem tax up there, they immediately raised this issue. And we fought this battle, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. Well, county prevailed on that. We won at the Court of Appeals, and then they filed for review with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court refused to hear it. So basically answering your question is there can be no other tax, and other than those taxes that we're setting up there, and that's the ad valorem tax and the actual severance tax that's on the books. We can't impose anything else because of that.
Does the severance tax for coal, does it specify for coal, or is it just a severance tax of anything that comes out from under the ground?
Oh, it specifies coal. Then there's one on timber.
I knew that and a portion of it goes to schools and a portion
Yes, sir.
goes to
You're correct.
roads. But I didn't know if it specifically said coal, because I know that we had talked about it several times about that, because I've got the same thing going on Half Moon Road and Frost Bottom.
That's
you know,
right.
the oil and gas down there, so.
Well, our procedure was, and I think a lot of y'all are familiar with it, I know Jerry is, we add it as an extra benefit or value to the real estate itself. And I think that's proper. And Coal Creek had an issue with that, but we prevailed on that because the land is more valuable for the subsurface mineral rights. Is there any particular issue I need to research for you on that?
No, just,
Robert?
I know that we had talked about it and had asked the state to come up with a formula for gas and oil, and I just didn't know where it ever got to.
It's because of that statute that starts out, no other tax shall be imposed.
But what about property that is not Coal Creek?
Well, that statute goes to anyone.
Okay.
It's not just Coal Creek. Coal Creek is the one that brought it up and said,
Right.
we call your attention to this, and you can't impose it. And we said, look, we're not imposing it the way you believe. We're adding it to the value of the land, because the land is worth more because of the subsurface mineral rights.
But if we prevailed on that, on the coal, then why couldn't we on the gas?
We're still up against that phrase and that first statute there. I think that'd be the first, because we're adding an additional tax to that land. We're not adding it to the value of the land. You're actually talking about another severance tax, aren't you?
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the coal severance tax that we have, collected for many, many years until coal just ceased to exist,
Right.
So.
And Tim is very familiar with this. It's not only on these natural gas wells, that natural gas is held down by a layer of crude oil. Is that the way it is, Tim? Correct. So there's actually, they're making money off the crude oil and the natural gas, and what they found out, and this is the reason they're not pumping up there, it's cheaper to hold it in the ground than to pump it out and put it in tanks. They just, at some point in the future, they know, okay, we've got so many cubic feet or whatever, cubic yards up there, and we'll start extracting it from the earth at that time. There's no reason to pull it out and put it in tanks. And, yeah, they're selling not only the crude oil, but the natural gas up there.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, to follow up on Commissioner McCain, it's been 15 cents a ton ever since, that was the maximum, I think it was in late 79 or somewhere in there, that they imposed a mineral severance tax, and it's, for us, always been at 15 cents. We maxed it out. So it's never been increased since then. So it's been 15 cents a ton on coal and crude oil, natural gas, and all of those kinds of fun things. But I'm kind of like Commissioner McCamey, though. I mean, I understand what you're saying, Jay, but if we can't raise it anymore, then what do we have as ability as a county to put down that bond to where we can make sure these roads are taken care of? Could we not implement something like a private act that says all companies operating in Anderson County that are extracting coal, mineral, crude oil, natural gas are required to enter a bond to satisfactory?
Right along your lines, that's exactly what happened. There's a state statute now, not just a private act. This is an issue that was across the state. And now we can put down that bond, or ask them to put down a bond.
How would we find out what companies are operating in Anderson County?
That's the difficult issue. Now, if it's oil and gas, coal, those are easy to find. There's only 2 or 3 vendors that, wholesalers that buy these products. I think there's 5 on the natural gas that we found. And timber is fairly easy, but Gary from time to time runs across people that it's other that are damaging our roads. And then Johnny Alley is the assessor's office is a great resource when we find out that we've got subsurface mineral rights or whatever that we need to impose a severance tax. But there's various ways they come. We'll get a complaint, like Gary will get a complaint about somebody logging, getting mud out on the road, and he'll go up there and investigate, and it will identify the contractor. And it depends. There's various issues that cause damage to the road. It's not just the mining.
Well, I guess if we're getting paid a severance tax,
yes, sir.
That means somebody's paying it.
On the severance tax?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
So
that's a part we catch through Johnny Alley's office.
So we should know who it is that's operating.
On those issues, yes.
Not necessarily on timber.
Right. I mean, from a mineral severance tax standpoint, I think we should be able to get with the state and have something from the state that tells us these companies are operating in Anderson County. And I think we should be able to.
We can get that, sir. We can get that today.
And then I think the next step to consider would be to go and have the road superintendent get with the finance committee or Jay or the mayor or somebody and develop a strategy to develop this bond, because I think it's important they put a bond down. I mean,
I agree with you.
Yeah, we require all these subdivision contractors and developers to put bonds down, and we hold them accountable when there's an issue. We should hold the other ones accountable, and they're the ones making a pretty good chunk of change.
You better believe it. It's the exact same rationale.
So I'd like to take action on it, and I don't know what the proper motion would be, Mr. Chairman, but we talk about it like a lot of things, and we kind of go around, but we don't. I'd like to see us take some sort of action to kind of move it down the line where these folks don't have to suffer the roads that they've been suffering, and now it's happening in Commissioner McCamey's neck of the woods. So what do you think, Robert? You got any ideas of what?
Well, I know the coal companies have to have a permit, and it's usually, in the newspaper, in the Clinton Courier, and I don't know if the gas and oil companies have to do that or not. Do they have to apply through the state to get a permit to drill for oil and gas?
I think they do, but right now, the damage that we're getting is from the timber companies, because we see more, timber trucks than we do any.
They have to report to the state. That's how we get our list through the assessor's office.
The timber companies?
No, the oil and gas people.
But the timber company is what one of our big problems is right now.
Mm-hmm. What happens, and this is the informal procedure, going back to Tracy's question, Gary identifies whatever entity it is that's damaging our roads. At that point, we'll go out and we'll send them a letter. We'll have a bond form in place, similar to a subdivision bond, and they get their surety and file it back with the county. I think the exact same, if we're looking for a policy or procedure, very similar to what we're doing down in planning and zoning with subdivisions, we can just use for roads. There's not much difference. If that's what you'd like to do, I'll talk with Gary, and that's our informal procedure as we utilize it right now.
Perhaps it could be subject number 2 for Mr. Pruitt to work on.
I think that's great, Tim. There you go. You don't know what you're getting into.
One time we had our road superintendent tried to put a weight limit on a certain road, and because it was considered a farm-to-market road,
Right.
there, you couldn't impose a weight limit, and therefore, you couldn't charge them for tearing up the road because it was what's
An
considered
agricultural
a farm-to-market
purpose, yes.
road. And I'm afraid that's what will happen with timber, is that's their product. That's
I
their
don't know
farm product,
if
and
you
get it-
heard the new case on timber, and this is, I never thought this would be approved, but Jack Daniels was being assessed for personal property on their wooden storage barrels that they store whiskey in. And was it Moore County was making a big chunk of money on personal property. Well, they appealed that to the State Board of Equalization, saying that was a wood product extracted from the land in Moore County, and won that case. So yeah, you're on the right track. That's an issue.
You want to make that a motion for the law director to?
Just, let me make sure got this right. You want to get a procedure down for the
I'd like to make,
bond, performance bond on roads.
yes, I'd like to make a motion that the law director help develop a procedure to establish bonds for mineral extraction in Anderson County for companies that operate.
Can I make it
Go ahead.
broader than that, sir?
Sure,
Other than
sure.
mineral extraction,
Sure,
just
sure.
any type of damage?
Yeah,
Is that okay?
I'm good with that.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yeah, I would love to, what Jay just mentioned about making it broader. Would you make one that would, for like the subdivisions and stuff like that too, to kind of, or is it two different?
I think that's going to be two different issues.
Okay.
It's back to the gentleman's question about the
Right, about
the riding. Is that what you're talking about, or subdivisions that are being created?
or where there, yeah, the new developments where maybe they're not necessarily.
We've got that in the zoning resolution.
Right, but if they're not necessarily, if they don't end up having to put up a performance bond, if that's at
I think
discretion or
I
something,
can
could we?
write this where it's broad enough to cover any type of construction or
Okay.
any type of industry that could potentially be damaging our roads. Would that be okay? That's
Yeah.
what I'm
Yeah,
envisioning
that's-
myself, is anything that could be damaging our roads.
Okay.
Okay.
Have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Comcast Cable. I had a constituent of Commissioner White give me a call, and he sent a letter, and I think all the members of the Operations Committee got a copy of that letter. But all across Anderson County, we constantly get complaints about having to deal with Comcast only. And what this is a discussion, and to maybe subject number 3, is to see where we can go with some of these problems that we have with Comcast. I'm just going to read this letter that came from Mr. Harbin. As per our phone call last week, here are just a few things I personally, as well as my family construction business, Kenneth Harbin Builders Incorporated, have been dealing with trying to receive service from Comcast. During the first week of March 2019, I contacted Comcast requesting service from my personal new home built at 1232 Blockhouse Valley Road in Clinton. As of today, June 8, 2019, the same day of composing this email, I still have no service from Comcast. After multiple attempts at calling and trying to understand the people from the other side of the world on technical support lines, I was informed last week that my home was not serviceable. That is so hard to believe because of the fact that the main Comcast line follows Blockhouse Valley Road in its entirety, and my house is directly on the same said road. Comcast should be required to provide service to me, as they are the only CATV and internet service provider for Anderson County, according to my understanding. Also, the fact that everyone before and after me on Blockhouse Valley has their lousy service if they choose to have it. Even the house that is 100 foot from mine has Comcast. My dad and I have been in development stages of a new subdivision off of Blockhouse Valley over the last year. We already have 2 new homes in it and eventually have a total of 6 homes over the next year or two. who have recently sold and closed of a home at 105 Silas Lane, which is the lane the subdivision is on. Comcast has informed these new residents that their new home is not serviceable. The negligence of Comcast about this matter has become an issue with the sale of our new property tax-paying homes. If a homeowner or potential homeowner should happen to perform the duties related to their employment requiring internet access and they are unable to receive service in their new home, this may in turn have an adverse effect on the sale of homes that I plan to build in the coming months. Comcast has held a monopoly in Anderson County long enough, and I feel that's time for a change. Comcast has obviously grown too big to provide customers a timely and prompt service in the area. I am of the opinion I'm not the only one in Anderson County who is fed up Comcast's obvious total lack of customer service. If I had another option for service, I would definitely exercise that option. Most surrounding counties have multiple options for service providers. I believe it's time that Anderson County has the same options. Kindest regards, Jesse D. Harbin, 1232 Blockhouse Valley Road, Clinton, Tennessee.
Couple of issues there. The Comcast complaints are something we get all the time. What we have, and Robert's been instrumental in this, is we've got a governmental affairs liaison with Comcast and AT&T. They sit on ACTV board. Right now, Ms. Brown has resigned. She was the former Comcast liaison with Anderson County. She handled these minor issues for us, especially on distribution of their product. She's resigned. They haven't replaced her. It's a very similar issue I'm helping Tracy with right now. We need that Comcast liaison back on our board. As soon as we get that, then most all these type of complaints can be steered through that person. Katie was really good about helping us out. Back to the requirement, they don't have to do it. There's many places in Anderson County that Comcast won't serve. Right out at my house is one of them. The law is a density requirement, how many potential customers in an area they have to fulfill. And as you remember, we used to write individual franchise contracts, but now there's a state statute that covers that. I wish it was different. As to options, there is options. AT&T's got UVerse. HughesNet is out there. They were aligned with Dish Network. But as far as customer service complaints, Comcast, we get them about Comcast all the time. I don't think it's just our issue, it's nationwide. Comcast doesn't have a very good rating on customer service. Some people would say they do have a monopoly. There's no doubt about that. They've got something everybody wants, and they realize that. But back to your issue, right now we're contacting them. This came about because of something in District 1, trying to get that liaison back on ACTV board. They have a seat there, and we'll steer all these to that governmental liaison. At one time it was Russell Byrd, you may remember him. Then it went to Katie Brown, and now that's vacant. We hope they'll fill that position. They haven't made a move as of yet. But is there something we can do to require them? No, but I think everybody remembers there's a rural internet. It's basically a state policy, and there's some enabling statutes that the General Assembly has taken the initiative to try to provide internet to rural areas. This is something. Mayor, do you have an update? Where's that stand? I haven't heard about it in a year or so. I know at one time I saw it on one of your agendas or.
The broadband
yes.
grants? The state of Tennessee has actually put more money into the grants. Although one of the things, I would encourage you to invite Brian Young, our IT director, to talk about this. The last round of grants that we tried to apply for, I reached back out to AT&T to pursue that grant opportunity, and they were not interested in this next round. Even though we'd already done all the legwork, we had all the data. I have met with Highland. In talking to Brian and trying to understand what's going on, I think most of these majors are they're investing their resources, and Commissioner Creasy can probably speak to this a lot better than I can. I know he can. they're in a race to go to 5G. And I don't know what that is going to mean. That's why I'd have to defer to someone like Brian to explain that, or Commissioner Creasy. I think that what they're thinking of for the rural communities is, instead of them, even though they would be the recipient of grant dollars to run fiber for broadband, they're probably looking at a different business model that's moving quicker than our broadband grants are. So in terms of wireless in serving these rural communities. So, you know, I don't know in terms of Comcast, I hear the same complaints. You know, they'll get different quotes, or their next door neighbor has cable and then they want, you know, $3,500 to put cable to their home. You know, I don't know what we can do other than continue just to ask and pursue grant opportunities and let the technology keep up. But I have always been an advocate of broadband anymore is like water and roads and electricity, and how long, you know, if you wait 10 years, that's another generation of children that have missed a lot of opportunities at home, and a lot of people have missed business. So, you know, I think there's kind of, Jay can probably speak more to it, I think there's also kind of an unspoken agreement with some of the providers that, well, that's AT&T's area and that's Comcast, and I don't want to rock the boat. And you know, I'm not saying that there's collusion, but I guess they're looking at, well, it's easier for us to stay in this area. I don't know what you would call that, but there seems to be some of that going on. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. That's a great update. I'll tell you what I'll do, and I've got somebody in my office, Cole, who's our paralegal. I'll ask him tomorrow to find out. We'll just keep pushing. We'll keep pushing every week to get a replacement for Katie Brown on the ACTV board, and that'll help us a lot. Most of these distribution issues, we can steer directly to that person, that liaison, and at least they'll get an official opinion from Comcast as to why, instead of getting us in the middle of this. But they need to replace that person. They really do. It would help a lot of our citizens understand why they can and cannot get Comcast. But I'll check on that tomorrow.
Commissioner Wadu?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate Jay working on, I have a constituent, as he said, on Norman Road. I know Commissioner Kamey's reached out to him a couple times, but same situation. Cable's across the street. The constituent will run the cable to the road, but they will not run it across the street. Be $4,600, $4,300 for him to have just basic cable. When his neighbor has it, and the neighbor on the other side has it, but he can't get it. So I can understand frustration. What I guess where I'm coming from, Mr. Chairman, is we've sat here for years and we've done a Comcast franchise agreement with Comcast. And I may be wrong, and I'm sure Jay will tell me I'm wrong, and I'll be happy to listen, but we've kind of renewed that agreement year after every 5 years, and I haven't seen it bid out. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I've never seen the opportunity for others to put a bid in, and I understand we get Channel 95, but when our constituents that pay taxes can't get Channel 95, it doesn't matter. So, you know, it's a level of frustration that I myself, many years ago, called Philadelphia when Comcast was there back then, and it literally took me a week and a half before I got to an upper level corporate person, and still nothing happened. So it's frustrating, and for you know, all of us pay this franchise fee so we can have Channel 95, and we get a percentage of it. And I just feel like we're not, I feel like there might be at a time. So my question, Mr. Chairman, is right now is, well, where are we at in that contract, and is it coming up due, and how much time's left, and all those kinds of good things?
Well, back to, I mentioned this earlier, they don't have to do a contract with us anymore. They changed the law. There's a state statute that allows them just to proceed under that. We don't this goes back to the mayor's point. We don't keep anybody out. If somebody wants to bring the product out here, they can. There's just very few people that are willing to take the investment. Where we're at, I think Robert, we did it 3 years ago. We renewed the Comcast.
I think just
Last year, it's been fairly recent.
So why
past
do we have a
couple years.
contract then if they don't have to abide?
They have the option. They can do the contract route or utilize the statute. We've got AT&T that utilizes the statute. We've got Comcast that likes to write their exclusive franchise agreement. But I can't recall any time that we've said, no, I don't think we have the authority to say no to anybody. Just like HughesNet. I mean, they operate in this county.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right.
I didn't want to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
Could it be something to consider on Channel 95 to allow a certain amount of time, space to our citizens that are unhappy with the current provider, to give them the airspace and the time they need to discuss their displeasure with the current provider? I mean, I'm to a point where that needs to happen because
It's frustrating.
our citizens cannot call anyone in this county and get an answer. The answer is you have to pay. That's not the answer for me. And I know it's not what Jay and McCamey and the mayor or anyone else wants, but you know, I feel like we're kind of hoodwinked with this Channel 95 deal. I mean, back then I was against Channel 95. I like Channel 95. Andy works, I mean, it's a great asset, but did we sell our souls to the devil so we could just have Channel 95? And then Comcast gets to operate at carte blanche? I mean, there's no response from Comcast to our citizens, and I think they deserve to be responded to, not sent to India to listen to a bunch of, if you can understand them, to try to understand what's going on. I mean, it's bad. And so I like for either the Comcast, the cable committee to get back together, or legitimately we give some time and space to those citizens in Anderson County that don't have Comcast, can't get Comcast. I think they should be given time on Channel 95 to display their concerns, their comments. That way it'll be broadcast on Comcast and they can clearly understand what the issues are. And I'm prepared to make that motion unless somebody's got something different they'd like to propose.
Before you start making motions, let's look at logistics here. There probably need to be something to happen in here. And could you call like a public hearing based on that matter alone, or like kind of how you do these committees? I'm not sure how it works, because, I mean, their message isn't gonna get out as quick if I got ahead of them all together. So like they're in a room and you had to come up, that typically
Well,
gets
do we still have the cable committee? Is it an active committee?
It's
ACTV.
I know they typically come if they know it's here, and we've got them come here before as of trying to just get getting attention.
I'll make a motion to refer this Comcast issue to the ACTV board to address, and that's my motion.
And we could always put this on the agenda
Oh,
for
absolutely.
operations and let them come in just like we did or even the intergovernmental.
Well, I like what Commissioner Wandell's saying. I think the board itself, ACTV, can say, look, fill this governmental liaison position. We've got a seat on the board for you guys. We need it filled. We've got complaints that need to be handled. And I don't want them to think that we don't need that position, just let it sit vacant. And it's very important to us to handle these type issues. And I don't mind at all letting our station manager send a letter. I'll help them draft it, but we need that position filled.
Well, I agree with Commissioner Wandell. We all get phone calls and it's nothing we can do about it.
I hear it all the time. Mayor does.
Mayor does.
Yeah. And the mayor does.
We organize it to where when they all want it, we can all be here and so forth, and make sure that the work, I mean, of course, we put it on station, it gets out, but make sure everybody can logistically fit to come in and say their piece. Maybe in here or something like that.
Well, that's my motion, to refer to ACTV board.
Second.
Have a motion, second discussion on the motion. Commissioner McCamey, I know the mayor wants to speak too, so.
I just wanted to say, I feel like I need to abstain due to some conflicts. And I might say that the from what I recall in the past, when we've had these issues, if your cable provider is going to hook up a customer and if they have to run a long line where it would be very labor intensive to install the cable, they feel like that they need the customer to help pay for that. It would be a burden for them to recover their money after, for what little they'll be charging the customer would take a long time to pay for that labor cost. And that's usually where they're...
Right, Jerry. That's back to Norman Lane. We've got that far, and they'll do that. But what they want to do is bring it on Norman, the long route, when this guy could come right across the street, bring it across the street and save a lot of money. He's willing to pay, but he's saying, why'd I have to pay for you to bring it a half mile when you can bring it 150? It's just 150 feet. It's
He's willing to pay to put in his own
Put an underground conduit.
self to have it right there
Right.
for them to just come across and
Run a line
connect.
from the neighbor's house.
And he doesn't expect them to pay for that.
Yeah, my explanation don't work on that one.
Yeah, but you're right, Jerry. That's what happens. But this is a situation where they want to pick the most expensive route to service this gentleman in District 1.
Now, you asked me here a while back about the fibers being laid on, I think you mentioned Blockhouse Valley.
Right.
I haven't been out there to look, but Verizon is putting in fiber optic in Blount, Anderson, Knox counties, a tremendous amount of fiber. So there's a lot coming. There's a lot of action going on in the industry,
Yes, sir.
in the broadband industry. There's going to be a lot of changes coming, but that don't solve these problems right now.
Yeah, they're doing it down in District 1 too, and they've been doing it, almost a year now. But when one of our employees stopped and asked them, said, who is this? Well, the company says, hey, we lay the line and sell it. So it's kind of strange. They're using the easement, smart. They know there's a market out there. They lay the fiber and then lease space on it or sell it and lease it and co-locate it. They're going out ahead at the time and putting the investment in and the infrastructure, just similar like a cell tower works. People build them and then, okay, you want to co-locate here, you can. And that's what this company is down in District 1 is doing. I don't know if it'll be Verizon or who else will pick up that line, but they're laying it everywhere down there.
Yes, sir. One of the things that a lot of people don't understand, and I'm not defending my old company, Comcast, I worked for them for several years.
Right.
I'm not defending them, but if the cable line that you see from your house is over 100 feet from your house, then you don't get good service with what they call a drop. They have to run hardline cable so far, and then they can go up to 100 feet. But anything less than 100 feet, you don't get good service. And I'm 110 feet. They had to run hardline service to my house because I'm 110 feet off the road. They wouldn't do it. I told them, I said, if I don't get good service, it's okay. And they said, no, it's not okay because you're going to call us and tell us you're not getting good service, and we're going to have to come out and do something. And that's the problem we have with a lot of these homes. They're more than 100 feet. So when they tell them that we have to have X number of dollars to run hardline cable so far, and then we can do a 100-foot drop, they don't want to pay that, And in this case on Norman, it's about 200 feet off the road. But again, the way they're routing it around, they're going like 600 feet with hardwired cable, and then they want one individual to pay for it. And it's going to benefit several other homes. In our, getting back to the Channel 95, Channel 95 and the franchise agreement don't have anything to do with each other, really. We have Channel 99 through AT&T, and we don't have a franchise with them, so that's, we've also got Channel 99, not only 95. got 99 through AT&T UVerse and Channel 95 through Comcast. Those are paid with franchise fees. And when we developed a franchise with Comcast, they chose to come to us and ask us if we wanted to do a franchise agreement or if they should just go with the state. And we said, you know, well, what can we gain? And they said, well, you can put some things in there that the state doesn't require. And we did that when we talked to them about the new franchise agreement. We got some things that they didn't have to do, they agreed to do. And one of those is to look at properties that are less than 25 homes per mile. They will look at it, and that was in the old franchise. They had to have 25 homes per mile to build the cable. So we put some things in there that were more than we would have gotten had they just went through the state, which they could have done. So, but anyway.
You got some good resources on this committee.
That's good, Rob.
I think now they're charging, it may be 150. I thought it might 250. You have to put in an amp. So every 150, 250 feet, the homeowner's got to put that amp, going back to what Robert was describing, which is a lot more money. But you can see how expensive it is for people to live far off the road.
Now, what was the motion? I know we started and changed it a couple of times. I don't think we.
Send to ACTV?
Yeah, we're going to send the complaints and the requests for getting Comcast established at these homes and citizens that can't get it to ACTV board to see if they can pick up the issue and maybe they can help spur it along and maybe get this person.
And that's going to be the outlet for the people to come and want to respond?
Well, I'd say it would probably help if they showed up at the ACTV board, yeah, just like they do here when they have an issue they want to talk to us about. Yeah, it'd be very helpful.
All right.
You're still on the board.
Yeah, we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Yes. Okay. With one abstention. Anything else? Any old business, new business? Oh, yes, I forgot about your resolution number 19-06-759.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Circuit Court Clerk brought this to my attention. There's a state statute on point now. I don't know if you've noticed, but troopers across the state are issuing what's called an e-citation, an electronic citation. They have a little clipboard and they punch it in. Some municipalities and other smaller agencies are using it. I think Clinton's got a plan to move to an e-citation. What this statute allows is for the circuit court clerk to charge a $5 processing fee for all e-citations. We believe in the future that just about all police agencies on traffic citations will be issuing e-citations. Now, where does this money go? It's not held by the circuit court clerk. As you see in the second whereas clause, it's $5. $1 of the fee is retained by the court clerk. The remaining $4 is transmitted to the law enforcement agency that prepared the traffic citation. Now, these are only in traffic citations. They're a plea of guilty, no contest, or a judgment of guilty. That's the only ones that'll apply. And if you look at the wording of the statute, and I've copied it verbatim, this is not discretionary. You see that word shall in there, it's shall. But if you look on down the statute, it has to be approved by the county legislative body. The other thing is this can't roll over into the general fund. It has to be renewed every 5 years. And what does that dollar use in the circuit court clerk? It has to be used for the things, and let's see, the third whereas clause, for the electronic citation system, program-related expenditures, for technology equipment repairs, and then where the clerks can use it for computer hardware purchases, usual necessary computer-related expenses, and replacement. And again, it cannot revert to the general fund. But In sum, this resolution allows us, pursuant to the statute 55-1-207, to charge a $5 processing fee on all electronic traffic citations that are sent to, that are traffic citations sent to our circuit court clerk for processing. And again, he does juvenile court and he does general sessions in this county. He retains $1 of it, $4 goes to the issuing jurisdiction. Any questions on this?
Recommend approval.
Commissioner Jameson.
Yes, Bob.
Is there any estimate about how much money that's going to be coming in?
I think I'll email you, but I believe he said there's 20,000, or his clerk said 20,000 across the entire county. But right now, it's only the state troopers that are issuing e-citations. My understanding is Clinton will be the next one online, but let me call over there and I'll respond via email exactly how many trooper citations are being issued, and then we'll know, we can figure out how much money this will bring in. But again, we only retain $1, and it has to go to those purposes specified in the statute. But
Will the sheriff's department get the $4?
No, it goes to it. Now, I guess if they were the issuing agency,
That's
they
what I'm
would.
talking
Yes, sir. I think that's what the statute would say. If they were the issuing agency, they would get the $4. But the clerk himself, he only retains $1 of the $5. But Brad, do you know are you guys issuing any e-citations right now? Better to this.
I've no talk with the sheriff's office. We don't issue a whole lot of citations. So it's all
Okay. I'll get you that number, though.
Will Oak Ridge get some money from this if
they start writing e-citations, they will. The issuing agency gets $4 of the $5.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Oh, Mayor, I'm sorry.
I just have a question, and I'm sorry, since this wasn't on the agenda, I didn't get to do my homework beforehand. Just a couple of questions. Can you explain the language of the statute? It does say shall, but then it says the local body may adopt. And how does that work if that, because may means we don't have to. And then is that the correct TCA? Because I went to, and that's why I'm apologizing.
What did you
because
pull up there? Didn't you find an edit on it? He's got, this is the rough draft.
55-10-207.
10, okay.
10.
Because it says 1 on
Yeah, it's-
here, and when I went to.
We've got the rough draft before you. This was just done an hour before, and he's got the edit copy back here.
Okay. So then that would need to be corrected to the.
Yes, ma'am.
To the,
There's some
to the proper statute. then.
punctuation issues there that need to be cleaned up too.
Okay. Okay, so I guess on the shall versus may, is it saying we shall collect, but then the locals can opt out if we want? Is that how an opt-out is done or phrased? And that's why I was trying to find the statute to find that answer myself.
Let me see where your may, whereas are you looking at in the may?
So in the beginning, it says each court clerk shall charge and collect, but then it says in your,
I see, that's
your local.
just straight out of the statute.
It says may adopt a resolution to authorize this. So.
I think what you may be getting in, and again, I'm just talking off the top of my head, that some of the court clerks feel better if there's legislative authority from the local county commission instead of doing it on their own, putting this in place. They would rather see the county commission take action on this instead of a interdepartmental policy from the circuit court clerk saying a charge is $5.
Because I think we have other clerk costs.
Yes, ma'am, you do.
That where it says shall, but we're actually not collecting.
Yeah, well, some of them have to be approved by the county legislative body. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But I would understand that. The county commission speaks for the residents and the constituents and the taxpayers of this county, and I think some circuit court clerks would much rather have the county commission approve it instead of them instituting this fee on their own.
Mr. Wandell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jay?
Yes, sir.
Just a question, and I guess the clerk is going to be the one that will be doing the accrual, auditing, handling of all of these fees and dispersing of these fees?
I'll be doing this disbursement. If you look at that, one section here, it says that it's the agency, the municipality that gets the $4 has to have a system set up, and let me see where we're at. The agency I'm looking at the third whereas clause. The agency that prepared the traffic citation pursuant to this subdivision shall be accounted for in a special revenue fund. So it can't just flip into the general fund, it has to go into a special code. Such law enforcement agency and can only be used for these expenditures listed there in that third whereas clause. And then the fourth one is for what the court clerk can use the $1 for. And again, it also has a provision there that it does not revert to the general fund. It has to go, it's similar to our data processing fee that we charge. I think that's a $2 or $3.
Mr. Chairman, I think I'd be in support of it. It seems like it needs a little bit more review before we take action to approve as is, and Jay has already indicated it was a rough draft, and I mean, but I could support it in the theory of it. But I guess the other thing I would ask, Jay, is if we could add something to where we can, it says the legislative body has to take action to adopt. I'd also like the opportunity to disband it if something goes wrong, you see, and that we might not be thinking of. I'd like that opportunity where we're not locked in for 5 years. We have to do it.
It has to be renewed every 5 years, you see, but you want the ability to terminate it at any time.
I think the county should, in case something has happened that we didn't take into account for, extra costs or something. I mean, I don't know.
Be glad to put that in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you want him to have that done by a full commission, and then we can take it up then?
I'll be glad I can get it done. Mayor, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I guess I don't want to get crossways with the state because I love our highway patrol. But, I'm looking at our jail issues and what we're discussing at the budget level. And this is basically an incentive for Anderson County to apply a fee that will go back and fund the state. We're sitting on millions and millions and millions of dollars in surplus while we are carrying the burden for the state of Tennessee for the housing of inmates. And I would be more inclined to support something like this if we could do a private act that turns around and says, we'll take the $4 and we'll put it back into our jail fund or something like that. I mean, not that I want to keep money out of the highway patrol's hands, but at some point, I think we need to be bolder about getting greater reimbursement for our inmates. They are getting a heck of a deal,
Well, 2 months ago, we had this discussion in operations, and we were supposed to be going back to the state to.
We do that all the time, but I love the mayor's idea. I would need to research it, but I like the opportunity maybe to put a private act in place for every citation they write goes to the county specifically for the jail fund. We might try that, and I'll talk to the legislative chairman, but.
It might send a message.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to be that much, but it might send it a message.
Commissioner Meade?
I think it's important to note that if the sheriff decides to go to these electronic tickets, then all the $4 goes to the sheriff's department.
Yes.
So it provides funding for the sheriff to adopt the new system, which they're probably going to want to do anyhow. So it's not just money that will just go to the state. Only right now, the state's the only one doing it. But the legislature has provided a funding source for any local or county police department that decides to go to the electronic tickets as an incentive for them to go ahead.
And it has to be used for the specific purposes. It'd be nice if they broaden that purpose, but I see why they did it.
So in other words,
where I'd like to.
Well, the $4 goes to them, they get to use it for their computers and stuff. which
where it
they
says,
need
like
to
if the state is writing a ticket, a state trooper, the $4 goes back to the state. So in that regard, what she's talking about is if it's issued in this county, could we split it? $2 to the state, $2 to the jail?
That is a private act. We're going off the statutory authority here in 5510-207. It doesn't allow it. We're going to have to do what the mayor's talking about when the General Assembly convenes next January, ask for something, which is a good idea. I'd like to see us try it to offset state inmates and local institutions. And anything we can get in that regard would help us because they are getting a deal by housing state inmates in the local jails. Even though they're, from what we understand from the sheriff, these are all inmates that are from Anderson County. They're just issued state sentences. So it's not like we're taking inmates from other counties. These are Anderson County inmates that are convicted on state charges. But I do like the idea, and I'd like to explore that opportunity that the mayor's talking about next session of the General Assembly.
So do you want us to not approve this then?
No, I want to.
Okay.
If it's your desire, but what she's talking about is not, there's no enabling language in this statute to do what she's talking about, although it's a great idea.
Okay.
That's another avenue. This specific statute only allows for these purposes. This is not optional. This is set by this statute.
So what we could do is send it to full commission, I guess, without a recommendation until he makes the necessary changes. So then we can take it up in full commission.
These are, again, these are very minor changes. These are grammar issues and a couple of changes here. This won't take any time to do. I can have it ready. If that question is, I can have it ready for Monday. That's no problem. I can have it ready for the agenda packet Wednesday.
When would it take effect?
Take effect immediately.
You want to make that motion?
Do we have a motion on?
No, I think we just started discussion about it. And so we'd have to amend, you had a first and a second to start the discussion, but we could do it as amended, to change the wording.
Change this wording?
Or what you was going to do, you was going to do some corrections to this.
Oh, that's very minor. There's nothing material that needs to be changed here. This is something, that would take 10 minutes.
All right. So we can just approve it as presented.
Approve it with the changes, and then we'll go back and look at what the mayor proposed in November, December, and have something ready in private act form to take care of that issue. We can't handle both under the same document. There's going to have to be separate authority.
All right.
We approve this for 5 years?
It's for 5 years.
He was adding the ability to cancel.
Right. That's what, and this has to be renewed every 5 years pursuant to the statute, but what Commissioner Wandell wanted is the ability to cancel it. Well, we can, on most all resolutions, we can cancel those resolutions. That's no problem. We'll just, if it doesn't work out, we'll just cancel it.
I mean, Mr. Chairman, I assume the clerk is feeling like they can handle this business.
Yes, they brought it to me. This is not something I brought to
But
them.
it's not nothing we have to do. I mean, there's no timeline. I mean, we could actually come back next month and approve it, couldn't we?
Sure.
Let's do that, so that we can give everybody time to.
Just out of the month's worth of minutes.
We don't rush through it and pass something on Monday that we didn't have a whole lot.
Motion to defer then?
Yeah, I make a motion, we defer the resolution 19-06-759 to next month's operation with the discussed changes and amendments to the draft resolution. So moved.
Have motion deferred, we have second.
Second.
Have second, any discussion? Well, there's no discussion on that. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes to defer. Anything else come to this committee? If not, thank you all for your time.